Hello, BillWhittle.com members and non-members alike. I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is your Right Angle Lightning Round, where instead of having a story that the three of us discuss, having pre-discussed it on our backstage show, I inflict seemingly random headlines at Bill and Scott. They have no idea what's coming, except that I have not randomly selected these headlines, but chosen them, hand-selected them for Bill and Scott, with malice in my black little heart for each of them.
I think that's a distinction without a difference.
It may well be. It may well be. As we used to say on the debate forums in the ancient times of online BBSs. Wow, I'm getting old. All right, Bill, we're going to start with you. Ricochet has a podcast that I haven't had a chance to listen to yet, but I'm going to as soon as we're done here today because I'm just fascinated by the question, and I want to get your take on it because I think really this is the question of the year, maybe the decade, I'm sorry to say. How do you protect yourself and your family from the mob?
So, is this a trick question? Really? Is this a trick question?
From the cancel culture mob, yeah.
Oh! I thought you meant like street mobs.
No. The current we hate everything mob.
I see. Actually, protection from the mob is simpler than most people realize.
Yeah.
It involves the enthusiastic generation of a 2-word incantation, the second of which is you, and then and this needs to be broadcast as loudly as possible, because, and this is not funny. When we look at all of this stuff that's going on in America right now, all of it, it's going on because we allow it to go on. This is not a foreign nation with superior military technology. This is not something like a virus or anything. These are the worst people in society. I'm talking about the rioters and the looters now and the cancel culture crowd, who have never been stopped by anybody. Every time they've ever challenged anyone from elementary school, they're in Walmart, they didn't get a toy they want, make a big temper tantrum, and then you get what you want. They got that through high school. They never had winners and losers in Little League or soccer or anything like this. And now they're on this roll. Universities, they go into a university, make a demand for the safe space here, and this teacher needs to be fired because he said something I didn't like. And the universities do it. And so here we are. We're in a world where people who have been forbidden to compete in any way except for how large they can rang up the victim points. What's the biggest score I can get in terms of virtue signaling? It's the only way they're allowed to compete in this society that they've built for themselves. Now these people are just trying to top each other. And the only answer to them is that 2-word incantation, because honestly, that is the end of it, Steve. It's the end of it. Seriously. Yeah. It's like, Bill, we need to shut down BillWhittle.com. He's a racist and he's a white supremacist and he's all these other things. And whether I'm not or I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to say, and then I'll complete it. And once you get to that place, man, seriously, once you get to the FU place, they have no power over you. They don't. They have no power over you. And this is why, of all the things I see out there now, it's not the transgressions, it's the retreats that makes me sick. There's a number of streets, a number of businesses boarded up on Ventura Boulevard, not terribly far from where I lived. And every one of them says, "We heart BLM, and it's like, please don't hurt me. Please, I'm on your side. Please don't break down this door. We're on your side. We're as if the people who are smashing windows care about what side you're on. It's a rampant retreat and cowardice. And the answer to standing up to the mob is to basically take away their power over you by telling them, I don't care what you say and I don't care what you think about me. Doesn't matter.
Bill,
Steve,
all those statutes. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I'm sorry. I was just throwing in what Bill made me think about is that you'll never truly be an artist and you'll never truly be free until you're willing to lose everything that your art and your freedom have gained you for the sake of the truth.
Well said.
Well said. I was inspired by what Bill just said. You know, the statues of Lenin where he's looking up and out into the future, and often he's got a finger pointing towards, you know, the glorious socialist future. I want to get a Kickstarter going, a GoFundMe or one of these things going for a statue of Bill Whittle scowling down at the angry crowd, raising a middle finger, and the brass plaque at the base would say "F you."
2 middle fingers, and it must be 1,000 feet tall and made out of pure platinum.
It's going to
yes, let's get that going. We'll start that right as soon as we finish recording.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll get the money coming in no time.
And one of the feet has to be raised as if to crush anyone who would dare, approach the pedestal.
There we go. Yes, indeed. All right, Scott, let's move on to you. Oh, Seattle's C.H.O.P area, formerly known as CHAZ. You remember that? Yep. Turns bloody again. Second shooting less than 48 hours. This was on Monday. Seattle's breakaway region now also has a sexual assault crime scene as well. And today, on Tuesday, finally, the mayor said she's going to put an end to CHAZ. Too little, too late, my friend?
Actually, I think it's too soon because I also heard that over the weekend, the city of Chicago had 100 shootings and 13 shooting deaths. I think that the mayor of Seattle ought to be crowing about the victory that they have achieved in our city in relative comparison to Chicago, which is a much larger city, I'm sure.
That's great. Yeah. Anarchy is the only thing that produces less murder than Democrats.
I think it was.
Laugh or you cry.
There are times when I think that the mayor of Seattle was just a dope and doesn't understand human nature, and there are other times when I think that she kind of looked at her political career and said, "Okay, what's the path of least resistance here? Let's let this roll for a little while. Let's let the initial steam fizz out." And then we can bring it to a close. And so I don't know which assessment is accurate. Frankly, I don't know this person, but it's inevitable at some point that people have to get back to whatever kind of lives they had before, and you're not going to be able to maintain the initial enthusiasm of any kind of a movement like this, especially one that takes territory with no plan to defend it or to civilize it. So I heard on the radio, actually, I think I was listening to National Public Radio, and they said that the mayor had basically said, okay, it's time for everyone to go home, and the police cannot do their proper duty unless you give them their precinct back. So part of me just wants to say, my initial reaction when people do stuff like this is to just pay no attention to them because they want attention. And my reaction now is to pay no attention to it because I don't want them to get lathered up again. Just let it go.
Did she think about putting up any no murder signs? Has that been addressed?
Oh.
Murder-free zone or rape-free zone, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Strictly will not be tolerated here? Did they? Because I think signs will really do an amazing job.
I think there were several people busted for cigarette smoking, but I don't know about any of that.
Yeah. Shooting's okay. Bill. Oh, this one's from your neck of the woods. Los Angeles City Councilman Jose Hozard arrested on federal RICO charge that alleges he agreed to accept at least $1.5 million in illicit benefits. And when I look at what's going on in your neck of the woods there in Los Angeles, I have to ask you, what a piker, right?
That's right.
One of the things, just being married has just been so wonderful. But one of the tough things about marrying somebody from out of the country, especially somebody from Russia, who was old enough to have grown up in the final days of the Soviet Union, is it's tough to explain some things. And one of the things that are tough to explain is just the rampant filth in Los Angeles. She would say, so is there no money to pay for cleaning up the streets? I'd say, well, yes, we pay, 9+% income tax to the state. There's all these city taxes and fines and so on. And yeah, of course there's money. Well, then why don't you get it cleaned? Well, because that money goes to retirement funds, I guess. And she basically said, look, in the Soviet Union, or in Russia, basically, which is still essentially a kleptocracy.
Yeah.
In the Soviet Union, you make a deal with Putin, or whatever happens to whoever Putin's individual appointees are in the various oblasts, or whatever the case may be. So you make a deal with the officials, and you give them about 25% of what you make. And this is my point. You get something for that. You get something for that. You get education that doesn't cost anything. You get medical care that is not charged to the individual. It's a totalitarian state, but so is California. And they're taking less money than they're taking from us. And they're delivering. And this is the thing I simply cannot explain to her. She's really, you half of the money you make goes away. And if everything was magnificent, you could make the case for it. But no. And for those of you who are not out here, it's interesting. It was a merciless destruction of a woman I was debating, Democratic councilwoman, and she was talking about how wonderful Democrats were in terms of governance. And I said, everybody in this room, and it was a room full 400 or 500 people, said everybody in this room right now can get on the 405 and drive north, and you will know the instant that you are in democratically controlled territory, because the roads will no longer be smooth. There will be potholes everywhere. There'll be filth on the side of the road. It happens when you're going north, and it happens going south. Orange County is governed by Republicans, and it's clean and it works. LA County is governed by Democrats, and it isn't, and it don't.
You know, Bill, it's funny you should mention that. First time I went to Los Angeles as an adult, and I lived in Northern California for 6 years, never once went south of San Luis Obispo. I don't care for Southern California very much. So first time I go to Los Angeles as an adult, it's probably early days of PJ-TV, so 2009, 2010. Wow. And I was shocked. I mean, shocked at the filth covering the highways and the streets and the conditions and all the rest. And then last fall, I was in Orange County for just a couple of nights, and I was equally shocked, although pleasantly so, about just how clean and well-maintained the streets were there.
That was the nice part about traveling with my wife, was showing her that she doesn't live in America, that America is actually a very nice place and generally speaking well-run.
It really is. That's why I loved spending that lunch with you a couple of years ago when you brought Natasha out to Colorado Springs. It was a lovely day, lovely city.
And beautiful place, beautiful place.
Yeah, never leave. Scott, I hate to give you another one of these questions, but I have to. This is one of those cut to the quick ones. No, I'm not kidding. It's one of those cut to the quick observations from our friend Heather McDonald. She writes, the looters are not grieving over the stomach-churning arrest and death of George Floyd. They are having the time of their lives. You don't protest or mourn a victim by stealing OxyContin, electronics, jewelry, and sneakers. Protests pretty much turn into a very rapid excuse for a even more lawless kind of Mardi Gras that never really ends, didn't it?
Well, she's saying essentially the same thing that George Floyd's brother said, which is, rioting and looting doesn't bring back my brother. And this is where it's tough, because I'm not there. I'm not in the streets. I don't see what's actually happening. I only see what the news wants me to see. So I'm kind of somewhat cautious in my critique, but I know that there are some people who are just taking advantage of the fact that there are a lot of people in the streets, that it's nighttime, that the police can't possibly deal with the flow. They're otherwise trying to just provide a cordon of security and protect innocent people. And so they take advantage of that opportunity. There are other people who think that their act of vandalism or thievery somehow is retribution for years of oppression and abuse that they've suffered at the hands of white supremacy and police brutality and racial injustice. And then there's a third group of people, and there are probably more groups, but there's a third group of people who are legitimate peaceful protesters. And when they see this kind of activity going on, this law-breaking activity going on, they feel like they're not the ones to say anything about it. It's like the people who say, well, I'm personally opposed to abortion, but I don't think we should make it illegal because I'm not a woman and I don't know, I can't speak on that. And so they kind of hold back and they say, well, I don't know what it's like to grow up to be a black man in this society. So who am I to step forward and block this guy from putting a brick through a window as the only outlet he has for his righteous rage. And then, of course, there's the final group of people, which are the people who are the peaceful protesters and are willing to step up and stand in front of a business and say, no, brothers, this isn't the way to handle this. This doesn't advance the cause. We are not going to break this guy's window. I also happen to know from somebody who was at one of these protests that when things get broken, at least in their town, the next day, the peaceful protesters come around the business people and help them clean up and in many cases give money to help them get their stuff restored. And so there's that going on too. But again, you don't see a lot of that in the media. It's sad all around. And I think, if I'm the one who's protesting advancing racial justice, then I think I also want to be one of the ones who's standing in front of the window and saying, no, stop, don't. This isn't what we're doing this for. And I think that's the reason why we revere Martin Luther King today is his willingness to lead his people to say, we are going to bear the indignities, we are going to bear the abuse to show which side has the case of moral righteousness with them.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Martin Luther King Jr. because I want to finish with something. Zuby, I believe is a British hip hop artist, put something up on Twitter Sunday or Saturday that really caught fire. In a lot of negative ways and in a lot of positive ways. I want to focus on the positive here. He said, I love how judging people based on the content of their character rather than by the color of their skin, their gender, or their sexuality has now become a right-wing position. We live in the dumbest timeline. This country was founded on the idea that the individual is sovereign, the individual is sacrosanct, that you cannot violate the individual without due process, and there are even limits on that and all the rest. And it was an imperfect start. Women couldn't vote or hold property. I don't know how many blacks were held in slavery. It was incomplete. But over the course of about 150, 170 years, we really started to complete that process. And it was something that, other than some holdouts, pretty much everybody could agree on, that we're supposed to judge each other by the content of our character and not by any secondary characteristics that we're either born with or just as flawed humans that we happen to have. And the damn shame of it is just at the point where we'd reached not a state of perfection, but a state of much better, that about a third of the country, and I'm talking about our Democrat and progressive friends, decided to piss all over it and throw it on the ash heap of history. What a damn shame, and what harm these people have done to our country, just at the point where we're getting so much better at it. Sorry to be the bearer of that bad news. We'll try and lighten it up here a little later, I promise. Thanks for watching. I'm Steve Green for Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. We'll see you next time.